In tonight's vice presidential debate, the tax discussion will be a key issue. The so-called $5 trillion tax cut for rich people. Now take a listen to former Senator Alan Simpson in an exclusive interview only on CNBC today.
You have a situation where Grover Norquist has obtained this pledge. In the 80s and the early 90s, he got this pledge that you wouldn't raise taxes under any circumstances unless there's a commensurate spending cut. And those guys are enthralled to him.
The best way to take that on is to reform the code, to broaden the base, to simplify the code, to wipe out these tax expenditures and use that money to reduce rates.
Well, all right. Looks like Herb Bowles supports the Grover Norquist idea, which is the Mitt Romney idea. It sounds like Simpson, as usual, is being very crotchety. Let's go right to our two guests to get the hoedown. We've got Dean Baker, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and the aforementioned Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Freedom. First of all, Grover, what is Alan Simpson talking about?
Well, Simpson and Bowles, their proposal, the one thing they're specific about is that they will take taxes from 18.5% of the economy under normal circumstances, the historical average for the last 30, 40 years, to 21%. That over a decade is a $5 trillion tax increase. They tend not to talk about it, but it's the most important thing in Simpson-Bowles. It's a $5 trillion tax increase. There is no room for tax reform because they take all that lovely money and they spend it.
Yeah, but what about, look, okay, there's tax rates and tax revenues. Now, a couple things. Tax rates, marginal rates, are different than tax revenues. Yeah. Revenues can come from growth. They can come from capped deductions. I just want to ask you, Grover, do you support Mitt Romney's plan, which would lower the rates, put a strict limit on the dollars of tax deductions, and increase the economic growth rate? Do you support Romney?
Well, Romney's plan is revenue neutral. He's made a commitment to the American people not to have a net tax increase. That's a great plan. Obama wants higher tax rates, and Schumer, the leader in the Senate, made that clear as well. So it's between Romney wanting to cut your tax rates and Obama wanting to increase your top tax rates. That's the difference between the two parties. All
right. Dean Baker gets you into this discussion. You know, Dean, the Brookings Institute supports lower tax rates and knocking out deductions. That's everybody in Washington except Team Obama. Obama's idea and Biden's idea is to jack up tax rates for the upper end. Lord knows what they're going to do with deductions. That isn't tax reform. They're the odd people out.
Well, Lord doesn't know what Governor Romney wants to do. That's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe Representative Ryan will be able to tell us tonight, because the point was he's saying he wants it to be revenue neutral. He's told us how much he wants to cut taxes for the wealthy, and then he says he's not going to eliminate the tax deductions for middle-income people. That doesn't add up. So he's got to put something on the table.
No, it does add up. It doesn't add up.
You were just talking about the Brookings Institute. I looked at their study. They're the ones who say it doesn't add up.
Well,
so I don't know who it is.
No,
wait a second. This route
they have completely backed off, Dean.
No, they have not.
Yes, they have.
I've read their stuff. They've not backed up one iota.
Go back and read them the last 72 hours because they put in the wrong assumptions for these caps on deductions. Here's my point, Dean. Here's my point. What Mr. Romney has said in a detailed statement is he is going to put a strict dollar limit on these deductions, and that limit is going to be even lower for the upper class than from the middle class.
You can't.
Let me finish. You're probably talking $17,000 to about $25,000, $35,000. No one has ever done that before. That limit could raise over $1 trillion over time, Dean.
Larry, you only get that if you take away tax deductions for the middle class that exceed their tax breaks. The point is, if you're cutting taxes for the wealthy as much as he's saying, you're not going to make it. You don't make up Warren Buffett. If you give him a 20% tax cut, you don't make it up by taking away his mortgage interest deduction.
Well, if you take his charitable
trying to say, and it doesn't work.
Grover Norquist, I beg to differ with my friend Dean Baker, who usually gets it right. But Grover, if you put a strict dollar limit, for example, on charitable deductions and health care deductions and state and local tax deductions, if you put a dollar limit on that, Grover, you make a bloody fortune at the upper end. So their tax rates at the margin would come down, but they're to be lost. Now, isn't that would balance it in a revenue-neutral way? And I'm going to throw in some economic growth, Grover. That would get you to 4% economic growth, which throws off more revenues than Dean Baker ever emerged.
The economic growth is the most important part. What we have with Obama If Obama had had the kind of growth that Reagan did from the bottom of the recession, there'd be 10 million more Americans at work. There are 10 million Americans sitting home
we weren't going to see it because it was a very different recession.
10 million Americans not working because Obama spent money and raised taxes rather than taking
Grover.
Reagan's approach.
Collapse of the housing bubble?
Well, Dean, what about, I don't want to go through the housing bubble. Lee, let me
Well, I don't want to either, but we did.
But the housing bubble's not going to come up for debate tonight. I'm sticking to the debate tonight. And Joe Biden has been out on the campaign trail proudly boasting that he and Mr. Obama are going to have $1 trillion tax hike on rich people. Now, I ask you, Dean Baker, I appeal to your sensibilities about economic growth. How can $1 trillion tax hike on the most successful earners of small business possibly get us out of this economic malaise? I appeal to your sensibilities, Dean Baker.
Well, I would just say it won't hurt. We had a big tax rise on the same job creators back in the 90s, and we were creating 3 million jobs a year. So it won't hurt. But that by itself won't do it. And, you know, frankly, if I thought for a moment Governor Romney was just going to say, let's have a real big tax cut and run large deficits, I'd probably say good for you and back him on that. But I can't trust him.
Grover, I tried. I'll give you the last word in 20 seconds, Grover. What's your last response?
There's a difference. Romney and Ryan are going to take us with less spending and lower taxes, and that's better for the economy.
Music to my ears, Grover Norquist, but it is always great to welcome back Dean Baker to this program. Thanks very much.